Hello, my name is Debbie Reynolds. They call me the Data Diva. Today I want to talk about data privacy and the CCPA employee data system. So what's happening right now with the CCPA, people are getting ready for the CPRA in California to be going into full force in January 1st, 2023. One thing that people aren't really looking at, and it's something that I want to bring attention to, is a part of the CPRA, which the CPRA has been in effect for over 2 years now, but there was a provision that never went into effect because companies and organizations thought that they needed more time to be able to implement this change. But this change now is coming, and it will go into effect also on January 1st, 2023. And this is around employee data. So basically what the CCPA does is it creates obligations for companies in terms of being able to, for example, provide privacy notice to their employee, and then also create a system where an employee can ask for more transparency with the data that they keep. So this is very different from the way that organizations are currently dealing with consumer data under the CCPA. Many companies are not accustomed at all anywhere in the U.S. of being able to give the amount of transparency that's being asked for under the CCPA for employees. So this isn't just, employee asking for like their payroll records or HR records. It may be any data, whether it's structured or unstructured, that you have about a person that they may be able to see. I think a lot of companies are going to trip up here because, again, especially in the U.S., this hadn't been ever a type of obligation that a company ever had. So if companies aren't really thinking out the box, they probably aren't ready to be able to fulfill their obligation under the law. Also, employees, in addition to kind of their right to access and to make requests of their employees, there's a 12-month look back period. So that means that if an employee asks you January 1st, 2023 for their employee information, you may have an obligation to give them up to 12 months of information. Also, one thing that I think a lot of other companies aren't really thinking about, and this is about employee surveillance. So as a result of COVID, a lot of companies have started to install or have been using spyware, kind of what people call bossware. So bossware meaning having some type of digital system to track people's productivity and their keystrokes and the things that they're doing on their computer when they're working. One of the problems with this particular type of surveillance that is happening is that under the CCPA, companies may have an obligation to let people know that they're doing this type of surveillance. Again, this is very different from what people are typically accustomed to in the U.S., meaning that the employers typically didn't have any obligation to tell employees about the type of data that they were collecting on them. And this is going to be very different. So I think there's some legal jeopardy here for companies that aren't really thinking through the data that they're collecting and thinking through what their new obligations are that they likely never had before. We'll see definitely how this plays out. I try to call it out to organizations because, January 1st, 2023 is fast approaching. So if you haven't really thought about this right now, I think now's the time to really think through this issue and be prepared because the California state is ready to slam organizations that can't comply with these regulations. They think, well, the law's been in effect for 2 years. People had quite a bit of grace period. So there probably won't be a lot of goodwill here if companies trip and fall at the finish line. That's it. Thank you.